Hello chess lovers, I have a very interesting game for you played in round 2 at Grenke Classic 2018, with the white piece is playing Nikita Vitiugov and his opponent is Georg Meier. Vitiugov started with e4 and e6 by Meier, French defense, d4, d5 and e5. We see the advanced variation, c5, c3, knight c6, knight f3, queen b6. Black is starting to put pressure on d4 square, a3, which is becoming more and more popular nowadays, and knight h6. This knight is coming on f5 square in order to intensify the pressure on d4. But of course this move also has its minuses. White can always capture on h6 and damage black's kingside structure. But on the other hand, if a move like knight e7, then the knight is blocking the bishop's path. White can capture on c5, and if queen takes c5, then b4 with a tempo and then c4, and of course white has a very pretty position. That's why after a3 we see knight h6, b4, c takes d4, and instead of recapturing, we first see this Zwischenzug b5, first kicking away the knight, and then bishop takes h6, damaging black's pawn structure on the king side. G takes h6, and only now we see c takes d4. But of course there is nothing wrong with black's position. At any moment black can place the rook on g8 square, put pressure on g2, or even black is sometimes placing the rook on g4 square, intensifying the pressure on d4. Bishop d7, knight d2 and rook c8. Of course black can't capture on b5 because of this rook b1 pin, and then a4, and black is losing a piece. That's why after knight d2 the rook occupied the open c file. a4, queen c7 looks very active. Black wants to place the queen on c3 square, but it turns out that bishop b4 is better, with the idea of bishop c3 forking the pawn and the rook. If bishop d3, then bishop c3, and if rook c1, then bishop takes d4, and after the exchange of rooks white can castle kingside, and of course white has a compensation for the sacrificed pawn. White has a space advantage, which is very common in advanced variation, and also black's kingside pawns are weakened. The light squared bishop is very passive. Also this knight on a5 looks awkward. Though I have to repeat once again that this variation would have been better for black, but after a4 we see queen c7, bishop d3, queen c3, and now a question arises: how is white going to protect this bishop on d3 square? For example, now if a move like bishop e2, then knight b3 can be very unpleasant. Of course queen takes b3 can't be played because of this queen takes a1. But after queen c3, Nikita Vitiugov found a brilliant continuation. He placed the king on e2 square in order to protect the bishop. This is just amazing. Look at this powerful king move. And after bishop e7, he played rook c1, and after the exchange on c1, we are in the endgame, and no problem at all for white. Bishop d8, knight f1, bishop b6. With this beautiful bishop maneuver, black placed the bishop on b6 square in order to put pressure on d4. Rook c3, king e7, but of course if we have a look at the position, white has an advantage. This bishop looks very awkward. Also the knight is somehow misplaced. Knight g3, a6, king e3, 8 takes b5, 8 takes b5, knight c4 check. Georg Meier is choosing a very daring decision. He tries to somehow activate his position, but let's see who will favor this variation. Bishop takes c4, rook c8, pinning the bishop first, knight d2, then comes bishop a5, rook c2, d takes c4, finally black is winning back the piece. Now comes knight e4. Of course capturing on c4 can't be played because after this bishop takes d2 check, white is losing his rook. Or after d takes c4, if a move like knight takes c4, then this time bishop takes b5 can be played, and black is managing to equalize the game. That's why after d takes c4, Vitiugov found the best continuation, knight e4, c3, knight b1, and this pawn on c3 square became an easy target for white pieces. Rook g8, knight takes c3, in return black is capturing on g2. Now comes knight d6, just a perfect outpost for the knight. Rook takes h2, well if a move like b6 trying to save the b pawn, then knight e4 can be played. If rook takes h2, then knight f6, and then this rook can come, and this is just crushing. That's why after knight d6 we see rook takes h2, but after winning the pawn on b7, this time the b passed pawn is becoming dangerous. Bishop b6, knight c5, h5, knight takes d7, first getting rid of that bishop, and then knight e4, h4, rook c6, kicking away the dark square bishop. Here comes the knight, kicking away the king as well, and the b pawn marches forward. Rook h1, b7, h3, and white is promoting the pawn to a queen. By the way, after b7, if a move like rook b1 trying to stop the b pawn, then white can play rook c8. If h3, then b8 queen, rook takes b8, rook takes b8, h2, rook b1, and white rook is just in time stopping the pawn. But after b7 we see h3 and the white queen appears on the board. h2, rook c8, and black resigned. Looks like that black king is getting checkmated, and if a move like rook e1, then simply king f4 and it's over. Black king can easily get checkmated. A very interesting game, I think, especially I liked that king e2 move, and then of course very artfully Vitiugov managed to realize his advantage. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave your comments. Good luck.